All right. All right. Hello, everyone. We're happy to be here again with another discussion on Black community issues. Today, I'm joined by three wonderful people that I've met recently. I ask them to introduce themselves soon. But just to kind of give an introduction of what we'll be talking about today, we'll be discussing matters that from the last discussion that we had, that I said we would, on the relationships between Black men and women. Now, I know that that sounds a bit more like a red pill type topic, but it really isn't. I believe that this topic is very important because considering that men and women are the ones creating and reproducing in our community, and where the family that you're born into and the society and the circumstances you're born into can affect your entire life. So I think that it's a topic that is not talked about very often, and that's what we'll be discussing. So we can start out with Emma, who is not new to this channel. Maybe you can just tell us a bit about yourself, and then we'll go down to LA and Mello.
Hey everyone, Emma Ansa here again. Thank you so much, GA, for having us on. I am a media journalist, PR consultant, and I cover news that's related to or affects the Black community in Canada and globally. That's my main job. And then I'm also a PR consultant. So I work with companies rebuilding their brands, whether they be new companies or companies that have been in existence but just don't have a lot of visibility, or business isn't thriving. I help with them to rebrand, build, promote. Yeah, so that's what I do, sort of in a nutshell, high level. Lots of wonderful things, everything I'm passionate about. And again, happy to be on.
Well, that's great to hear. Thank you very much for that. And we'll move on to LA if you can introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is L.A. Wade. I am here situated in Toronto. A lot of people think I'm from the States because my name is L.A. That's not the case. L.A. stands for Lorianne, but people take liberties and shorten my name to L.A. I am an author. I am a story coach, speaker facilitator, and most generally, I am a creative strategist in the healing space. So I use creativity to find ways for us to process not only trauma, but just different ways of being relationally and individually. I would say that's what I do in a nutshell.
Awesome to hear. Thank you for that. And finally, Mello, if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Mello, but my actual, that's what everybody calls me. My name is Tiku Fisher. My middle name is Romello, so that's why people call me Mello. And I'm a producer. I usually have worked in post-production film for feature films and episodic series. I've worked on films such as Black Panther, Ant-Man, um, Indiana Jones, a few other titles. Um, and I'm a multimedia designer as well, and also teacher of that as well. But that's mainly what I do.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. So, as you can all see, we have a pretty rich panel today of people, and I'm very glad that you're all here, and I really thank you for being here today to discuss this thing with me. So, just so that we can all be on the same page of what we're talking about, I hope that maybe we've all been aware of problems that exist, at least in the online space, in among Black people in Western countries like the United States and Canada and even the UK, where well, it ranges from a lot of things. It ranges from what we have, what we call the manosphere, where you have ideologies where men, Black men especially, tend to say very degrading things about Black women, and tends to not. There's a very big lack of respect, if I can put it in very mild terms, towards Black women. And in retaliation, I would say, because I don't think, if we look at this very realistically, I believe that a lot of this, in my view at least, does stem and come a lot more from the side of Black men who have been doing this against Black women. But then it has now brought Black women to kind of retaliate, to also start to say, to kind of divest from Black men. And, because they feel that if they are not wanted, then they'll have nothing to do with Black men. And this is obviously a problem because if we're going to be born into these situations, because this has not stopped the fact that Black men and Black women still reproduce. And that is a problem, because now if people are born into these sort of situations where either their parents are not together, their parents are not doing very well, uh, or, 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 or not very stable, then we have situations where you have a mother and a single mother, and that's difficult on its own, but it can also lead to a lot of instability where she may be trying to find a man in her life, and this leads to all sorts of problems. So this is kind of what we're talking about, and I feel like this discussion has actually been hijacked by the political right, where they're the only ones talking about it, and in a very pejorative sense. So they'll insult Black people by saying, "Ah, you're probably a single mom," or they'll see a Black man and they'll say, "Ah, be careful with him; he'll make you a single mom," stuff like that. And so they're the only ones talking about it. The only response that people who are not on the right will say is, well, don't say that there are systemic issues that lead to that. And that, while that is true, there are plenty of financial and systemic issues that are there. I don't see a lot of discussions being had on what we can actually do within the community to solve these problems. The only, I said, in the manosphere or in other places where it's being had in a lot of isolation. So just to start out, before I continue, um, what have you, if you have noticed, I hope that you've noticed these things, and if you have noticed, what have you noticed, and what do you kind of think about it in a general sense? Maybe we can start with LA and then move on to Emma and then Mello.
What I've noticed, that like you just gave a whole
Hello.
rundown of what is wrong with the world. I wish there was easy ways. So I don't know where I heard this, but I did hear that the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. And so I think that the manosphere and the like is kind of the elephant in the situation. And we have to approach it one bite at a time. And um, I wonder if there is a way to listen to what the manosphere is saying objectively so that we can hear where the source of the pain is actually coming from in order to address. Because I feel that a lot of times people want to be heard first and then they are willing to listen. So people that speak loudly or defame people or are more pejorative in the way that they express themselves, um, I think it is that they don't feel heard. And I think that there's something there that they want to be able to say so that there can be an understanding. And they're willing to take anybody down as a result of their own pain. Hurt people. These people are clearly hurt. And so when we attack people based on what is happening externally, we lose the opportunity to address the pain where somebody is living in so that we can help us all heal together. So that would be my first, intake into this conversation is why is it that they are hurting? Why are they presenting this type of information? A lot of Black men are not heard in general, so that could be stemming from there. So when we don't address that kind of, if we don't address that first, then it's difficult to kind of, tease apart and see what is really going on there.
Thank you very much for that. Miss, maybe we can move on to you.
You know, first I'll start by saying Black men are the number one race of people that date or get into relationships outside of the Black woman. And I agree with LA when she says that there's obviously some pain there, there's some hurt, there's some trauma probably. And I've spoken to quite a few Black men who only date white women specifically. And, we've had those conversations. So to your point of LA, of them wanting to be heard, I would ask that question. Like, what is it that made you shift, knowing you came from a Black woman, you have Black sisters and brothers and all of that stuff. And a lot of the responses that I get always starts with because Black women X. So I think when you start by immediately going to the Black woman and saying it's because of you, then that disconnect starts happening because it's like the Black woman's already defensive. Like, okay, I'm asking you why you've chosen to date outside your race. Tell me what it is about that race of people. And don't start by saying because Black women, right? So that I think is a problem for most Black women. They'll be like, okay, so you're going to put it all on me why you chose this. So I think as it relates to a forum to listen, I think first you got to don't start by saying because Black women. And that's the first thing. And then secondly, if you choose to date outside your race, don't trash Black women, because then that also causes a problem. And we'll never be able to get in a room and have a productive conversation, because if you're going to be trashing Black women when you choose to date outside your race, it doesn't work. Now, I will say some of the responses I've gotten from Black men is, I've always tried to be with a Black woman, but because of my darker complexion, they would say things to me like, I don't date dark men, and call them names. And those kinds of things stay with them, like spook and night and all of these other things that they heard when they try to be with a Black woman. And to that, I say, okay, so that happened to you, but have you tried what happens now? Have you just completely abandoned the Black woman because based on experiences you've had with some Black women? So I agree with you, LA. I say all that to say there's definitely pain, but I think if we're going to have that conversation, we have to make sure we kind of come in with a very open heart and be vulnerable and not point fingers and denigrate.
Yeah. Yeah. That's hard to do. It's
I'm
just so
so
you know,
sorry.
people are, if
Yeah,
you're
so
hurting
sorry. My thing
somebody,
was a bit latent.
That's okay, GA. I see that you are freezing a little bit there on your end, but that's okay. I'll chime in.
But you can hear me now.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
hear you now. Yeah,
Okay. Yes. Yes. Please, Mello. Actually, but just before you go, Mello, or you speak, Mello. I'm very glad that you're here because you can ask the other two. I insisted that Black men be in this conversation this time because last time we only had women, and so I'm very interested in hearing your view. Not that I'm not interested. Interested in hearing all of you, but yes,
of
please go ahead.
course. Yeah, no problem. I think so. What LA and Emma are sharing is that this is what the narrative is right now, and it's been a narrative for some time, and that's the frustration between Black men and Black women. Not to say that we don't want to be together. It's just the narratives that we also hear and that we repeat, and that is being showcased everywhere. And so that creates the separation. I like to get down to the root of the problem, me personally. I like to, obviously have the discussions about the what I call the surface stuff, which is, you know, um, Black men say this about women, and then the Black women having something else to say about Black men, and it kind of goes on and on, right? And that way. But I'd like to kind of go to the fact that this is how our people were raised. It goes back generations. And so, I grew up with a single mother, right? And I've always been told that, my home was broken. But when I went home, I didn't feel necessarily that it was broken per se, because that's what I knew. I knew something was missing, but I didn't feel that it was necessarily broken. And my mom was very, very hard on me, very hard. Um, as I grew, I start to realize, what types of things my mom had to go through in order to make sure that we had what we had. Even now to this day, you know, um, and I'm a much older person. I'm learning more and more about what my mom had to go through in order to make sure that we were fed and there was a roof over our head and so forth and so on. And through my experiences, even with relationships, I ventured a little bit only because there was a curiosity, and there's the part that is about, trying to find love, especially when you, as a man, are going through life, whether that be through school and so forth, and you get dumped for the first time. And, in my experience, it was being dumped by a black woman in front of everyone. And, because I'm sure she wanted somebody else, you know? And so those are the type of scars that we kind of carry. We carry the scars from not only our own relationships, and the result of some of those relationships and what they mean to us, but also from our parents, and what kind of things that they went through and how they treated us, and how they worked through things. What kind of problems did they solve, and how did they solve it? Were we able to see what their thought process was in order to make sure that they, made what they found was a sound decision, right? Now, for Black men, I've been around Black men where they, yeah, degrade Black women. I've been around Black men where they degrade women, period. But I've also been around Black women that degrade Black men. I've been around an era where light skin was in and dark skin wasn't, right? Now, all of these things I see on TV all the time, right? I see it in the movies that we watch because I'm in the movie industry. I see it in the shows. Right now, I see in shows a lot of integration in terms of, black-white relationships, black Spanish relationships, a whole bunch of different types of relationships. And and again, you're not really seeing too much black man, black woman, successful black families growing, right? And there are a lot in society, but we don't hear it, we don't see it. So we tend to mirror what we are shown, and again, that stems from way back, right? I got beat when I was a kid. That didn't come from the fact that she just wanted to beat me. That came from her probably, getting licks, and it went on from time, right? But imagine a time where the black family was actually together and they tried to protect each other from someone else that was trying to do some harm to them, right? Our society is, I find, is very tends to promote separation of the black family for a reason, right? So we got to be reminded of that, I think, um, just so that we're not over and on top of each other, trying to blame each other all the time. But that's just my thought.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, and I thank you for all of your inputs. And you're absolutely right. I it's a bit different for me because these sort of conversations, or this conversation about especially racializing the fact that racializing certain things that were done to a person. So, for example, like I think it was Emma who said, someone said that called you a spook or whatever, a black woman called you, and then somehow it becomes a black woman's thing. Now, to an extent, I'm sure it can be very prominent in a culture or people who look a certain way to say that more than others. But to racialize it, I can't say that it's very new to me because, I've been on the continent nearly my entire life. And most of the women around me and most of the women I'm attracted to are black or African anyway. And so I've never really it's something that is new to me. But then now when I see it happening, you kind of have to start to navigate and understand why it is. And one of the things that like you said, it goes way back. There are a number of things. So, the fact that for a very black people have been marginalized and disenfranchised, and of course they have seen uh, whiteness, that includes of course white people, as something to be achieved or something that to be strived for. And so when you have a bit of money or when you have something, sometimes having a white wife becomes a status symbol. And sometimes you'll find some men even today who are not particularly even attracted to the white women that they want to go for. They kind of well, at least I've seen it. It's not too common, but I've seen it, and but they go for it because they kind of want to say, have the idea that they have a white wife. It's almost like a status symbol, and those things are very I'm only mentioning the fact that it's new to me because in on the continent, these things do happen as well, where you'll find that it's like uh, your parents and our elders will say things like, "Oh, okay, maybe you'll move to Europe and you'll get yourself a white wife." Now they won't openly explicitly say that that is a better thing than getting a African wife, but they will very heavily imply so. And so there you can kind of see that this obsession on racializing things and self hatred, I would say, is quite prominent among a lot of this. So perhaps I would like to now move on to kind of asking you. Well, before I do, let me start the conversation. I personally think that while a lot of the media and a lot of the perception that Black people have of themselves plays a huge role, in yeah, how they treat each other, because if you don't like yourself, you'll treat other people badly. I personally think that the biggest role that it has, and I have thought about this for a while, because I think that the biggest role that it is that parents kind of bring these ideologies to their children. They bestow it onto their children. They they kind of have children in whatever situation that they're in. They have these ideas or this hatred or this antagonism with other either black men or dark skinned black men or white whatever, and their children kind of pick up on that. The only reason I say that is because of how many parents and how many people tend to give the same story of how they grew up. That like if you're a bit light skinned, the parents will tell you, no, 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 don't play too much in the sun. You'll get a bit darker skinned, or don't do this. You go and you get yourself a nice biracial wife or a nice a white wife or whatever. And I think that the disorder in having children that either you cannot take care of or that you just bring up all these horrible ideas to is even a bigger influence than it is on the media that they watch. I think that the media they watch definitely has a big impact. It has a huge impact where you see a certain portrayal of some people who look a certain way, always in a negative light, and others in a positive light, has a huge impact. But I personally think that parenting, very bad parents, are the biggest cause for a lot of these issues. Not just because of what they tell their children, but also what their children see. I mean, they can tell their children whatever. They can tell them, go and find yourself a good wife who does this, go and find yourself a good husband who takes care of you. But if you're not living that, if they don't see that in with you, they see that you make bad choices in the men that you associate with. You're constantly bringing home different men into the house, and you're behaving a certain way around men as a mother. Or your father, you're seeing your father is constantly cheating on his wife, or he's constantly assaulting or beating his your mother. These kinds of things, it doesn't matter what they will tell you afterwards. The fact is that they have seen these things for themselves, and it will stay with them. That's what I think, and I would like to hear your views on that.
Is it my
Well,
turn?
anybody, and Emma, LA, yeah, anybody can go ahead. Yeah.
These topics make me sad. Can I just say that? I just want to say that these topics make me sad, um, because they're very real and they are part of our lived experience. And white femininity is often held up in comparison to this idea of this angry, you know, crazy looking black woman that is the comparison is where the racial tensions kind of are held and pinned against one another. And this is where this idea of what Moya Bailey calls misogynoir. There's this hatred towards black women, and in fact, I'm doing a conference, a retreat rather, where it's called "The Black Woman Isn't Angry, She's Grieving," and she's grieving the loss of so many different things. And grief has many stages, and so we see these examples of those stages throughout our lives and our personal lives with the women that we interact with, but they get hyper exacerbated and larger than life in the media. And it's always these types of
Tyler Perry.
what's that?
Tyler Perry.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it I don't know if you're familiar with these archetypes that they say that black women can hold, like the mammy, the over sexualized Venus. Like, so these archetypes are the things that women will kind of, even if they're not this way, they kind of fall into ways of projecting themselves as this is my personality. And depending on your socioeconomic status, it can get perpetuated quite frequently and ubiquitously through that lens. And when you meet a person face to face, you might have an expectation for that to play itself out. So they're looking for Emma to be like, okay, let's wait and see if she gets upset and be like, oh, there it is. There's that woman that I know. For me, I write about sex a lot because it's a thing that is weaponized against Black women. And they don't even understand how much Black women have internalized their own pain in order to deny themselves uh, real human relationship, and they compromise their self-worth to be attached to a man who doesn't even like them. And it's so dangerous. So these different relational dynamics are at play, and they just kind of play themselves out as theater. And those of us that are objectively looking at it, we have a lot to say about what we're seeing, but we very rarely look at our own lives. When you get into an argument with someone, when you have a disagreement with people in your family, do you see how you've internalized certain things or your thought process? When we're not interrogating ourselves in the ways in which we approach one another, what is our outcomes? What are we looking to accomplish when we have our relational dynamics? I don't even think we're going that far to be able to scrutinize ourselves in a way that can bring us to a different relational dynamic. I don't know if any of you guys understand what I'm trying to say, but that's what comes
Yeah.
up for me when I think about it. And this white trophy wife thing, they are looking at social and political and financial, leverage. And they think for some reason the white body, or maybe sometimes it's the Asian body, is something that can give them that status or give them that feeling of autonomy and agency, which is something that when you come from a colonial lens or from a colonial experience, those are things that are often denied of you. So, especially in America, I see a lot of Black men kind of choosing a white woman because they weren't allowed to do it before. So, the taboo of it even gives them this, like, oh, your daddy, I'm getting your daddy back for what he did. Like, it becomes a whole thing. And, we want to be careful not to just say that these things happen because of X. We are diverse people with diverse experiences, but we do internalize ideals, and it gets passed down through the generations. And to be honest, we come from a colonial background. We've been colonized, and that is, we say that word without really looking at the fact that we have been educated to hate ourselves in many different ways. And so we don't have a lot of the skills unless we practice them or unless we go searching for it. Professor James Small says, um, go back and learn your history to erase the mystery. So, right now, these types of conversations are kind of giving us insight into the history of this mystery of why Black men and women act a certain way. Why do Black men choose these white women? There's a historical perspective that can give us access to that answer. And what are we willing to do with it once we find out? That's where we never get to in these conversations because we're too busy pointing our fingers at one another.
Just before somebody else goes, you're absolutely right. Though, I also see sometimes that when people try to approach this, they take it a little bit easy on both Black men and women, and it prevents us from actually holding certain people accountable. Like, understand, I'm actually very glad that you guys started by speaking about these historical factors that played into it. But on the ground and in the reality of things, I think we should be more right in saying that these people, we should just say it openly, that a lot of these people that at least present themselves online, they just have a lot of self-hatred. Some of them really come out and they give their reasons very openly. They've been giving their reasons openly as to no, like I don't want a person who looks like me. Like, I mean, there's literally a rapper who went out there and literally said in his rap lyrics that he's already Black, so he doesn't want a Black woman as well. Otherwise, they're going to have a dark-skinned baby. These people, they give their reasons. They tell them, they tell us that they compare Black women to white women. They tell us that no, it's because um, they don't openly say it, but it's because they don't really they don't like the fact that their blackness in the sense of what that means societally and what that means in their status wise, how they're perceived, but also how they physically look. And the problem is that if we do not tell them openly that this is a problem that you're perpetuating onto others, you're literally perpetuating a feeling of, because of your own self-hatred, you are hurting other people, you're hurting the society and the community at large. They're going to feel like it's more of a systemic thing that the white man has pushed down on me and everything. And while it is true that a lot of these things have been influenced and everything, now is the time that these people change, because a lot of these men who are saying these things are very young. They're not like Mr. Mello over here. I mean, some of them are like, they are around his age and everything. There are plenty of them, but a lot of them are youngsters and people who you know are not very experienced in life. Let me put it that way. And there is still a possibility to change their perspective, but I think that needs to be a little more direct and stern with them. And yeah, I just wanted to add that in there. But you're absolutely. Please go on with whoever wanted to speak.
I'm just going to touch on what you said, where you're talking about basically some of these Black men being products of their environment, right? They grew up in a home where they were denigrated. They were told they're less than. They're told they're too dark. I know, again, I know Black men and women, for that matter, that grew up in a house where maybe their sibling is lighter skinned and they are the darker complexion, and there's favor for the lighter skin by the parent, and it's obvious. And I think when that happens, that is, again, is trauma, and it's from historical issues with the parent. Okay. And that is visited on the child. And it could be something as simple as, well, I don't want to simplify it, but it could be something like the way their dark skinned father husband treated them, and their child reminds them, the dark one that looks like dad reminds them. So then this is visited on the child. So now when they go off into life, they don't want somebody that looks like them. They want somebody that's white, because then it's, I feel like white is right. So now I'm like, I've abandoned that life. I don't want anything to do with anybody that looks like me, and I'm going to go with this person that loves me and the family loves me and accepts me. At least that's what they think. And, but that's a whole other conversation. But, so I do think it does stem from home sometimes as well. And the way that you're treated and how your self-esteem is broken by the time you leave the house. And, you're literally looking for something different than what, the toxic environment you grew up in. And then from that, the Black woman is every Black woman is considered to be bad for them. And then so that perpetuates the bad narrative. And then also what Mello said about media, that is absolutely true. I mean, there's commercials, TV shows, they just love to keep showing that narrative of the biracial, the interracial family with the biracial babies and stuff. And there are a lot of biracial kids that are begging their parents to not intermix like that. Don't swirl, because us as a kid, what we're going through as a result of this is, they're like, please stop. And, so there's a lot of pain, deep rooted, historical, and it's just like a domino effect. It just keeps getting passed down. So I just wanted to go back to touch on the sort of the product of your environment piece, and just sort of speak to that as well, because that, at the end of the day, we're not a monolith. There's so many moving parts to why we are the way we are. But I will say our community is extremely fractured. And once again, when it comes to the race of people, we're at the top of the ticket of people that abandon our people to go and be in relationships with other races of people. You don't really see that much in the Asian community and the Indian community, and you don't see it to the extent that you see with Black people. And it does go back to history.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Just before Mello goes, I just wanted to mention so. Firstly, you're absolutely right with everything. Though I want to make it clear because I know that some people that, who are watching this are obviously not going to watch this because they are looking for solutions. Especially non-black people, they reasons to further hate on black people and whatever. So I just want to make it very clear. Can you still hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make it very clear that this is really not exclusive to Black people. In the Southeast Asian community, it happens a lot as well. They actually, I would say in some places it may even be a little bit worse to the point where, you know, you literally they openly say these things in the open that, I'm talking, for example, in India, they literally have caste systems where they openly in commercials will tell you that if you want to move up in life, you need to be lighter skinned or you need to be of a higher caste. Or if you want to do something good for yourself, go and get yourself a white woman. Asian Americans, and I'm not talking about the brown Asians, I'm now talking about the yellow Asians. When they get to the United States and everything, a lot of the Asian women do have a very big tendency to humiliate Asian men in the sense of because in the media as well, they tend to talk about penis size, whatever, to say these things openly, and I've heard a lot of Asian men complain about this as well. It is not really a thing. I've even and the funny thing is, I even hear this even happens in white communities as well. They also have certain issues of feeling a bit inadequate in especially the men feeling a bit inadequate in this way or that, and then the women go around. I want to just put that out there because it is really not exclusive to Black people. It is exclusive to people who have a self-esteem problem or a historical thing with self-hatred and a bad self-image of themselves. This can stem from a lot of things. It can stem from the fact that, in the household, they just never were made to feel like they're worth anything and stuff like that. And so I want to make it that clear. But it is a problem in the Black community, and I'm interested in solving problems in the Black community, especially in this discussion. But yeah, and then I'll comment on
Well,
Sir
sorry,
Mello.
I
Go
will
ahead.
say I agree with you.
Oh yeah, no, go ahead. Mm.
It's not only the Black community, but we are at the top of the ticket. So even if the narrative is, if you like, for example, the Asian community, the South Asian community, if you want to get up in life, go be with a white person, it doesn't actually happen to the extent that it happens with the Black community. And but I will say colorism does exist in the South Asian community. If you're lighter, for sure, life is great for you. And oftentimes they start bleaching their babies' skin as babies when they see that they come out darker. That does exist. As far as the swirling, though, I don't know if it's different in other parts of the world, but in North America, I find, well, I know from statistics anyway, it's the Black community is at the top of like dating outside of their race, or
Yeah, no,
marrying
in
outside
the
of their
United
race.
States, yeah, yeah, in the United States, it is true that Black men tend to be the demographic that marries that will marry more outside of their own group, but that is also because the Asian community, most of them come in as immigrants, and immigrants at large tend to marry among themselves. That is one thing, but also because statistically speaking, yeah, there is that, but when you kind of look on the ground, I think that it is also a thing where Asians just do not speak about their problems as well openly and air out their dirty laundry as much as the manosphere does with Black people. The manosphere people representing them. There has a lot of white and Black people talking about it, and they air out their dirty laundry like crazy. And the reason for that is because I have been around many sort of communities and groups. These problems really do exist. These problems are really there. But as again with the media, what you see and what you see, especially online, tends to distort the sense of reality. But Asians definitely have that problem. They really do look up to with this whole or white people with a whole big gaze. And even if they don't always manage to get to marrying them, it does not mean that that's not what they're trying to do. So yeah, just wanted to put that out there because it is a serious problem even among them. Mello, you want to?
I'm glad that you guys touched on that because that was something I was going to lightly touch on. Um, you know, This is such a vast, vast discussion, really. There's so many different points, you know. I do hear that a lot, you know, when it comes to Black men dating outside the race, but I also, just from my experience, um, you know, I've spoken to a lot of women and, you know, hear sometimes the reasons why they go outside their race. Um, and I think although it's a deep-rooted issue, it's really about communication. I'm just going back to what LA was talking about as well. Um, because it's a deep-rooted issue and we're all scarred deeply, it's kind of like, you know, how can you forget when you fell off that bike when you have all these scars on you, you know? And in some senses, it's like, you know, hey, forget about it. Forget about it. We need to move forward with it, right? But at the same time, you can't forget the time that you actually fell off that bike and you got this big gash on you and how it hurt. And so what I find is that Black men communicate differently than Black women. I could say men communicate differently than women, but Black men specifically communicate differently than Black women. And to Emma's point, it's because of how Black men were brought up. And also, you know, if we were to talk about just the way how society is, and how society kind of bends, and when I say bend, it doesn't, it's not necessarily changed in my point of view, really. Things are essentially the same. They just look or appear differently because of social media and all these other things, but it's the same, right? Um, where Black men are constantly shaded for what it is that they've been doing, you know. I know a lot of Black women that do some, or even women, period, that do some foul stuff, but nobody ever knows. Nobody knows, right? And to your point, GA, there's, you know, in other society or other races, there's a lot of things um, that are happening, but you know, the dirty laundry isn't put out. You know, not everybody's talking about it or putting it out there. So I tend to reflect even now, you know, where you were talking about like the P. Diddy's and the Bill Cosby's and all these Black men that are, you know, obviously, you know, doing foul stuff, but they're dragged throughout the media for how long compared to, you know, I don't remember, and I don't plug into the news that much, but I don't remember Epstein's, you know, or some of these other actors that are white that have been dragged in the sand compared to these Black men. And then what happens is when that happens, is that the Black man then becomes questioned even more so, right? And then the hurt and everything from our past or present becomes even more surfaced. And now Black men are looked at even, you know, with a magnifying glass in a sense. And, you know, and that becomes even more of an issue. The ways in which we communicate is becomes difficult because not only Black women are very hurt, but also Black men are hurt, and we don't know necessarily how to communicate well with each other to be able to make the bridge, you know, fill the gap between us to make sure that we are saying, hey, you know, we are loved, we do love you, we do want to be with you, we right. And if we are saying that, it becomes a thing sometimes where we're reminded of why things are the way they are, you know, why, you know, why is it that you why is it that you do this or do that, right? Um, we do have to take a look at ourselves. We do have to start making movements. But how do we do that if we don't know how to communicate to begin with? How do we do that when, you know, the lessons aren't there to say, hey, you know what, this is, you know, This is way a way how you can communicate the way how you're feeling, or this is the way how you can communicate, this particular thing to the black man so he could take it and digest it and internalize it as opposed to going, well, you're just trying to do something to me, right? So, and again, that goes vice versa. Same for the woman. From my mother's experience, I grew up with her and I've seen a lot of things that she went through as a black woman, right? I've seen the abuse, I've seen the struggle, I've seen so many things that my mother has gone through. And at the same time, from when I was real young, I've experienced, some of these things too, the abuse and even from, other races. So it's like, how do you try to fix something within yourself when you're also constantly reminded by other races who they think you are, right? And then at the same time, you're trying to move forward and you're like, well, I don't believe in that. I don't believe that. But there are people that constantly remind you of that, right? And again, that comes within the household. That's also within our education system. Having to now that I have kids, having to go in and have to defend them because their teacher says that they're behaving a certain way, where they don't know how to differentiate um, an angry white kid versus an angry black kid, right?
Mhm.
This one
Yeah.
is a problem compared to someone else, right? So there's it's so again deep rooted within our society and all the races really. Um, and when I say all the races, even to say that if you're white, what is it that you're being taught at home? What is it that when you're driving in the car and you see an Asian person go by? Oh, yeah, it's because they're Asian. We've all
Yeah,
said something
they
like
have
that,
these
I'm sure,
stereotypes,
right? We've all
right?
said things like that, right? So how do you get past all of that when you're constantly reminded or you're reminding yourself of that? I don't know. I don't know. But
Yeah.
I love the fact that we have these conversations now. We can do this. Technology is such a crazy thing, even though we tend to blame technology, but at the same time, technology can move us forward because of things like this. You're in South Africa, and we're in Canada, and we're talking about issues that South Africans or Africans have, although we're in the Western world. But it's a Western problem.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see these things. And actually, you helped us pivot into something that I actually wanted to now get into, which are what are people doing now to actually address these problems and what kind of solutions are bring forth. And so you've probably seen a few of the things that we are now seeing nowadays with something that I hope people will start using the term more, which is called humiliation content, where you've probably heard of this pop the balloon stuff. I don't know if you've heard of it or seen it or pop up in your feed. I do not know what it is. I do not know who started it. I do not know whatever, but every now and then I get a recommendation to see this thing. And it's, what bothers me most about it is not really, I mean, it is the show that bothers me, the whole concept of it. But what bothers me even more is the reception that people have to it. They actually really like this sort of stuff where they see men and women, both black men and black women, humiliating each other, where it's like guy walks in and everything, and it's just they're making a fool of themselves. And you'll be surprised to see the viewership of this may not even be that many black people. It's everybody else, and it just makes everybody look like a bunch of buffoons. So that's one thing though, because that is one source of people who are kind of having these black men and women come together, and it's a complete friggin' disaster. It's just humiliation content. It's just a way of making. It's just actually putting black people down. The other source is what I've mentioned before: these podcast bros on these manosphere people, the annoying ones who say the worst things imaginable to kind of have the shock content, where they will talk about I don't want to repeat the things I say, but I have made content about this and I've put some of the stuff there. Some people even defend it. I've even seen black women. A lot of people will start defend people like Kevin Samuels, for example, by saying that no, he started out good, and I agree. It's something that I've also had an idea of doing, where I would make videos of short form content of showing, giving black people, both girls and boys, especially teenagers, advice that maybe they did not receive because maybe they do come from a home that that was not stable, and so things that they may not know, like for example, tips on how to speak to people, tips on what you can do to kind of better your chances of getting a job one day, mistakes that you should not make that might stay with you for the rest of your life, like getting a criminal record, kind of giving these kind of important information. I wanted to do that. But now the people who are doing that, who have taken the mental to do that, are doing it in a horrible way. Like Kevin Samuels, apparently, I've seen the older content that he used to do kind of try to go in that direction. But as he started to grow and everything, the audience that he started to gain was an audience that just hated women, that just hated black women. That there's no other way of putting it. The audience wanted him to criticize and just talk down on black women the most, and that's what he started putting out. He said some horrible things, but there's that. So there are the podcast bros who are doing that, and they're not doing it right because what they do is they bring in these skimpy young women, they get them drunk, and they have them say the dumbest things in front of everyone just to humiliate themselves, and then they can talk over them. And sometimes they even end up humiliating themselves. These people, these are men with very low self-esteem, with insecurities, and are basically men, child man child or man children who just feel like talking trash on women to make themselves feel good. So that is not solving anything at all. They can even ask a very important question. Sometimes they ask a reasonable question like, why do you feel like this is okay? Which is a good question. Okay. Like, for example, why do you feel it's okay to be promiscuous? Or why do you feel it's okay to have different baby daddies, And that could lead to important conversations like, well, maybe it's because, I'm seeking validation. Maybe it's because I don't, whatever. But then they don't do that. They ask that question just so that they can interrupt them and say, no, it's because you're a this, and that, and everything. So, podcast bros, they're also talking about it, but not in a very good way. Then there is, of course, there's all sorts of content, but the most important place that it was supposed to come from, where these conversations were supposed to be had, was in the homes, where mothers and fathers and family and communities were supposed to talk about these things, like if they see that, for example, their daughter is hanging out with or going after a boy who does not care about them, who is abusive to them, who tells them to do things that they don't want to do. Their community and their families were supposed to kind of see that and take care of them, but they don't even have that. So what I would wish is that these conversations be had more. What we're doing here, these kind of conversations, but not just with us, because at this point right now, we're kind of in an echo chamber because all four of us over here kind of know what we're talking about. We're not really we're not the ones that really need to hear this. The ones who need to hear this, unfortunately, are in the other media that I've just mentioned, the media that is not helping them at all. And so just before you go again, I wanted to, and so what I wanted to say was that I'll just let, oh yeah, that basically if we could create a system where we could have men who have these problems, these men that I'm talking about with insecurities and who have been hurt and who need to vent their frustration, if we could have those men and women who have also been hurt and are seeking, help together, having constructive conversations about what they think is wrong with the other one, what they think is wrong with themselves, how they think they can solve these things, and have it be mediated properly. That could actually encourage, that kind of media can encourage people who are watching to maybe try that out for themselves in their real lives. Because remember, we don't live online, we live in the real world. A lot of things that we see online, maybe not even a reflection of a lot of things that happen in the real world, but it can affect people who are watching it. And I think that those kinds of conversations are important. That's why I decided to start that. But yeah, LA, you haven't spoken in a while, so I want you to go ahead.
That's okay. Thank you, Jay. I think that, our environments reflect a lot of the behavior that we are in. And it's clear that wherever it is that you are, whatever you have experienced, it has not been one that has supported the perspective that you clearly want to have these conversations about. But I'm going to change it up a little bit in the sense that there is a carrot and a stick to social media. People get clicks, they get shares, follows, brand deals. There is an economic system that is built into the humiliation of Black people. And there again is a historical perspective of, the Sambo, the minstrel, the people who were online or who were out in on the chopping block for our, the consumption of our pain. And I have this saying in my own stories about, I took over where my abusers left off. And our society has kind of fallen in line with that. We come from that enslavement mentality. We don't realize that the chains are no longer there. It has continued, and we have begun to do it. We're reinscribing these things within our own communities because it's what we get a payoff for it sometimes. And we also have built this system of scarcity that we operate in. And when people think that there isn't enough, we will do things to make sure that we are protected and always have something. So people, and these dynamics are so intersected and interwoven that conversations like this are important, but it has to be kind of placed in all areas. I think it's Dr. Claude Anderson that talks about the various levels by which we need to integrate change, like on not only in the media, but politically, in our communities/neighborhoods. There's ways in which that many aspects of our environment is influencing the scarcity mentality, and therefore we will be willing to do something that is against the movement of all of our people for the satisfaction of the individual. And that is indicative of a capitalistic society. This is what we live in. We justify individualism at its highest, and therefore it's very difficult to get a group think around coming together. The way to address it is to address it from a multi perspective. We do workshops, we have to do filming, we need to have music, we need to have art, we need to have things in our society that reflect what it is that we want in order to normalize what that now looks like. But there's too much of a payoff to not do that. And when you think you're in a scarcity environment, you are going to do what it takes to protect yours. I am not going to think about GA, Emma, and Mello if I have to feed my son and I know that I can pop my this or do that to another Black man and to get the click, the like, and the brand deal that's going to give me the money that I need to make sure that my son is fed. I'm not thinking about the group. I'm thinking about the me and my immediate family. And so what the system that we're fighting is a lot bigger than just our psychology. It's our psychology within a sociological framework that is like not benefiting the forward movement of African Black people. And even this African Black, that in and of itself is a small portion of the problem, but it is a massive problem that we don't even know how to identify ourselves. We don't want to, they have fragmented us so much. I don't know if you've put something through a shredder before, but you try and put that stuff back together again. You need to take time, care, and we need to have patience. And sometimes it will feel impossible. But you know what? The first glue, the first tape, and the first page is what we have to do. One bite at a time. We need to eat this elephant, and we have to not grow weary. We need to reinforce in our families, in our schools, in our politics, in the media. That's why our film, A Small Book, had a workshop with creatives kind of looking at themselves in the mirror and looking for what it is that they understand about themselves, because that understanding is going to become the domino effect to the kinds of work that they create in the world. If we are not self-reflective, we are going to continue to reinscribe where our colonizers left off. And there's a payment that is so large that is attached to us abandoning ourselves in our community, that this is the giant that we have to fight. And it's deep. but it's not one that I turn away from. It's one that I embrace, and you embrace, and Emma and Mello embraces, and there are many other people that are embracing it. But we're in silos, and we haven't yet learned the language of collaboration in a way that can create that critical mass to impact like a tsunami of a new way of thinking and being. Hip hop in the beginning kind of did a lot of that, but it was still drenched in capitalism, and that's why it was able to be co-opted and spread the way that it has to further divide us. So that's just some of my thoughts on it in terms of being able to
You
do
are
something
absolutely
about
right.
it. Yeah, it does. It comes from
No, go
us,
ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
it just comes from us talking openly about it, um, rewarding restoration and opposed to ruin. Um, and the things that we like to share on social media. I don't know any other community that shares themselves looking so terrible culturally. So, we're the ones taking over where our colonizers left off. And we need to
Yeah,
stop it.
and that's exactly the thing. Go ahead, Melo. I'll continue
Yeah,
afterwards. Yeah.
I just wanted to chime in and add to that. Ellie reminded me of a couple of things just now. Um, I remember a time when I'm just going back to Bill Cosby for a minute, but when the Cosby Show came out, right? The Cosby Show came out, and again, this is a time where we didn't have all the social media, but that was our social media, right? Because everybody came together to watch the Cosby Show, right? There was the Cosby Show, there was a different world, and shows like that. Nowadays, the last large impact on Black people in media was when Black Panther first came out, right? That movie. And I didn't know, I had no idea while working on that film that it was going to be what it was when it came out. But to see everybody come together and start to um, be proud of themselves, proud to be Black.
African, proud to be African.
I
That
was
was
just going to correct myself.
you.
I was going to correct myself, not because, and you're right, LA, being Black versus African, right? Black is the stigma that has been put on us by the Western world, right? Where African, everybody came out wearing I remember, a time where I was wearing my Black medallion, African medallion, everybody putting up the fist, and things like that. And so everybody came out wearing all Black. The meaning of Black became something different, right? The meaning of Black, right? Even though we're saying African, but the meaning of Black became something different in the Western world, right? As well as unifying people around the world, right? Um, and you tend to question then, which I did at the time, once that kind of frizzled back out and the concentration then became on the separation again. I was like, man, whatever happened to that? Like, because it was so good. Like, everybody came together and everybody was so proud. And like, I'm talking about all social media was plastered of with, Black Panther and how proud everybody was and so forth and so on. And then all of a sudden it just died, right? But at the same time, when we talk about Black Panther, we're like, yeah, we get happy. We get, when we think
Yeah.
about Chadwick, we're like, yeah, right?
Mm.
But for whatever reason, it kind of, it phases out. And,
You
um,
know,
and
sorry,
Mhm.
sorry, Melo. Just on that particular point, I actually wanted to say to him that LA also kind of mentioned that fizzling out, and also that aspect of you have something good going for you. And this is now I'm talking about the Black Panther Party, and I'm talking, ironically, we're actually talking about I'm talking about the Black Panther Party of the '80s. During that time. there was a huge movement. It was a time where a lot of Black Americans finally had some pride in themselves and saw that something good can actually happen. And this is not the first time that such movements have happened. In the past, there were opportunities and certain areas that were progressing, and they were just shut down. Tulsa, Oklahoma is one of them. But here in the Black Panther Party, we know that those kind of people that LA was mentioning, where it was like, I got kids to feed, or I just care about myself. These hyper individualized, selfish, psychopathic people within the community are the ones who bring it down. The ones who sold, who were used to introduce the drugs that the CIA actually implanted into the Black communities were Black people who were selling it to other Black people, even though the CIA introduced it to them. But what you mentioned with the fizzling out is something with the Black Panther Party movement towards the end. And it's actually something that I learned from an interview that was had where a Black woman kind of explained it. She said that there were certain times when some members of the Black Panther Party would come and kind of start distributing food and aid and things to like. But when the Black Panther Party started disintegrating because of not just the infighting, but the engineered infighting that the CIA and the United States government created within the Black Panther Party, it eventually turned into people, the Black members coming in. They start distributing food, and people just start looting stuff. People just start destroying everything, and it just started to become a complete mess. And people started to realize that no, this is not going well. And eventually that fizzling out also started to happen. But the fizzling out tends to happen when the real problems, the actual problems that cause people to have these things, are not addressed. So this is something that I've noticed since I've actually started creating content on the internet. Because at the beginning, I was actually my channel began to grow only because of Pan African, actually Pan Africanists. The Pan Africanist community on YouTube. One of them saw my content and started sharing it with others, and it was a great thing. The problem that I had with them, and what eventually led me to kind of see something that some things were not adding up, was the fact that a lot of them were trying to kind of were only focused on working on the aesthetic of things, in the sense that let's put out a movie and let's get some people riled up, encouraged and everything, which is a fantastic start. But for as long as people still have to work, from 9 to 5 jobs, people are still in single parent households where things are not easy. Where as long as people are still having alcoholism and drug abuse, for as long as people their boyfriends are still beating them, for as long as people are still having these physical issues, and those are not being addressed, then they can watch Wakanda and Black Panther and think that that's going to solve their problems, and eventually that fizzling out is going to happen. I mean, the Black Panther, the reason why I mentioned the Black Panther movement is because that was a physical thing that actually started uplifting people. They brought in the free lunches, they brought in education for the people. That was way more than just a movie, the Black Panther movie. And even that fizzled out because eventually the real problems in the community were not being addressed. So what I would say to that, because the reason I interjected is because I want to mention something, Mello, that you mentioned, is because I think that one solution to it is that if instead of uplifting a movie like a Black Panther, which is a start, it encourages people. I think that if you find these small groups, because they exist, there are small groups where you have these mentorship programs where they have these young men who take other young men under their wing. I have seen some of them, but they are so unrecognized. People don't even know about them. People don't even hear about them. They're underfunded. They're in these tiny local communities in towns that you've never heard before. They're doing great jobs, but you never hear about them on the news. You never see about them in movies and everything, because for some reason, whenever there is someone who's actually making a real difference, solving these real problems, they get much less attention. So now just imagine for a moment, and this is my point, that instead
Let
of,
me
yeah, go ahead,
interject
Milo,
real quick, right?
please.
And
Mhm.
you brought up a really good point, which then begs me to ask you, which a lot of people come up with this same thing. They always say, you know what? There are so many good things that are out there. Why aren't you, as an example, going out there and recording what these guys are doing and showing everybody? Why isn't somebody else that knows about all of these great things putting it out there, right? Yeah, we have the Black Panther movie. Yeah, we had the Cosby Show. Yeah, we had. These are people that decided that they were going to put it out there, right? So, yeah, now we have this. If you know about something, put it out there. Not just concentrate on, again, what the separation. Like, I would rather you go out and record all these people that are doing great things and putting it out there than going and concentrating on the two groups that are fighting each other and trying to put them in the same room, right?
Yeah.
Our priority on things tend to be somewhat different. And so, yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. You know, social media tends to, and again, to what Ellie was saying, it's a money maker, right? We're talking about, systems that have been put in place to dismantle our communities. If we have that basic understanding and we're still on here trying to show our differences still, then what are we doing, right? I'd rather use that
And
that go ahead.
no, no, no. I was just going to say. Well, first, Emma, I know that you must have something to say just before I speak. Did you want to say something, Emma? Yeah.
Well, I think it depends on how long your point is, because mine's going to be long-winded. So,
Please go ahead.
well, I'm going to go back to what Mello said about, the black celebrity and everything that, they go through. And I'm going to use Shannon Sharpe as an example, because here we have a man who's 55 years old, 55-year-old black man who elected to involve himself with an 18-year-old white OnlyFans model. And he got dragged. Okay. Like, I don't think there's anybody who can't unhear that audio clip and unsee the text message exchanges that went on between her and him. And then ultimately his $120 million deal went in the toilet because he ended up getting terminated by ESPN. And, when I cover these kinds of stories, going back to communication and creating safe spaces for Black men to talk about, like, why, Shannon Sharpe, why would you elect to go down this road, as a successful Black man, So I think that there needs to be a safe space for them. And I know for me personally, people were like, well, there are a lot of Black women that are saying, I would never touch him. He's getting annihilated by his people, their people, you name it. Everybody is like, he canceled Shannon Sharpe. Where I'm on the other side of it is, I want to have that conversation to understand why, Shannon. Like, what is going on inside of you that you, at this point, at the peak of your career, would elect to do this, And I think that has to start happening. And it goes back to creating those safe spaces for Black people to have these, uncomfortable and comfortable conversations, to understand, why are we so fractured as a people? Why can't we, this one word I'm always preaching about is unify. Why can't we unify? Why is there always this backbiting and, backstabbing and competition and all of these things that go on within our community? And I'm not suggesting it doesn't go on in other communities. I'm sure it does. We just don't see it to the level that we do in our community. So that's what I wanted to start saying. And I used him as an example to say, we need to have those conversations. And I do know one organization in Toronto is called Iron Sharpens Iron. And the first Friday of every month, a group of Black men get together and they talk about the issues that they're facing. They're very vulnerable, and they started doing it for women as well. So we need more organizations like that, where, you create those spaces for Black people to come and have those conversations and talk and pray and laugh and, all of those things and share. And that is severely lacking in our community. And I know, LA, you want to say something, so go
No,
for it.
I think I shouldn't say something, to be honest. And that's part of the problem in the community, is that um, I think that we put a lot of pressure on individuals and organizations to fix the multidimensional problems of our community. I think that spaces where Black men gather to heal and do those things are super important. But when it enables bad behavior and nobody is checking each other on, they might share, oh, I'm cheating on my wife, I'm doing all of these things. A community response to that would be to go and heal that brother, not hold his secrets, and then help the organization grow and recruit more men to the situation so that more people can have that toxic understanding of what community looks like. I'm just going to say that. um, I think that we have to be easier on ourselves, because this is not just a psychological problem. This is psychological and sociological. I just want to keep reiterating that, because we can get into the situation where we feel like we're not doing something enough. We're not strong enough. We're not this enough. We are enough. There are things in place to make us not feel like we're enough, but that is a facade, and we have to do whatever we can. If we have to get across the river and there are only a few stones, and we're over there crying that we can't get across there, look, there's only a few stones. For me, my mentality is I'm going to find a way to make those 3 or 4 stones make me get to the other side of the river. Other people stand there and say, I can't do it, there's only 3 or 4 stones. Those are the different types of mentalities that we are dealing with in trying to help our community get better, get stronger. In the meantime, there's the colonizer picking up the rocks and putting them in different places and rearranging it every time we find a pathway. Harriet Tubman brought the people across and was like, yes, freedom. What they do? They lock it down. Every time we find a way, you talked about the Cosby Show. Yes, people came together to put that out, but it's only because NBC needed time slots and actually thought it was going to fail. But we have to take as many people through that ocean so that before the door closes or the water comes back in, we some of us are on the other side. And we have to keep building for those of us that can get through the obstacle, set up shop and create an environment that helps other people. When they get there, they can do it too. Each one, we gotta reach back and help each other go through the levels. Shannon Sharp, having a conversation with him, there are just some people that they don't see it, and it's they don't see it because of the environment that they grew up in. It's not just something that is wrong with Shannon Sharp. There's something wrong with our culture. There's something wrong with our society that looks at those kind of things. And you don't choose something that didn't work for you. Also, right before I finish, is don't think you are this Black men, don't think you're the same as white men. They get away with things that you will never get away with. You might have his same amount of money. You may think you have the same amount of power. You do not. And every time something happens, they will show you who you really are. I believe it's Obama who, in his book, Dreams of My Father, wrote about how that they are going to give you the corner office. They're going to put you in places. They're going to make you try to forget about your people. And at the end of the day, they're going to yank your chain and remind you that you are still the N word that you were before we put you where you are. So don't get it twisted that you think that you are somehow doing something. The environment that you're working in is there to make it hard for you. It's there to make it hard. So if we don't work together, to Philip Scott's point, and create our own media and create our own infrastructures and unify with people who are doing what you are doing, you are going to be stuck complaining about the environment that you're living in and working in and trying to thrive in, when you have the ability, GA, you have the ability, and it may not be massive scale, but it can make impact. And you don't know how consistency can have a butterfly effect that you may not even see in your lifetime, but it will definitely work. It works. We are having this conversation on a streaming platform. This is proof that it works. We're in 2 different places and we have a similar mentality. How many other more of us are there in the world that we are not coming together and having these conversations, not just conversations, but action items? What do you need to do something different? How can you support? How can you support? Conversation is step one. Let's go beyond the conversations. That's what I want to say. Go beyond the conversations.
And if I can just finish, I don't disagree with you,
Sorry.
LA. No, I don't disagree with you about these spaces. And yes, creating spaces for, rewarding bad behavior, if you will. So I agree with you. We definitely need to have authentic spaces. But to me, it starts with unity. So unity is the word of the day. I want to just finish my
Yeah.
thoughts by talking about your point, GA, when you were talking about that show, Pop the Balloon. And I know, I always say a lie can travel faster than anything else in life, right? So that show is so toxic. It is the peak of toxic. So I think, it starts with what you consume as well, because you turn on your phone, TikTok, social media, there's so much bad about our community for sure. And that seems to take off faster than anything else. So to Mello's point about rewarding and talking about the good things that goes on in the community, the good bit, like all of the excellence that we just don't talk about because we focus on, not we, me personally, but I just mean in general, we will focus on the bad. So using Shannon Sharp for example again, the amount of podcasters that cover this story, we've completely abandoned all of the good that's going on in our community, all of the excellence that's going on in our community. So we have to also, it's, to me, it's twofold. It's unity and celebrating the wins, the triumphs, the excellence of our people. We have to start shifting the narrative. We can't have these diaspora wars, African Americans against Africans, and we're boycotting Africans. To Mello's point, it benefits only one group of people when and we know who those people are. It's the folks, it's the white people. So it doesn't benefit us as a people when we're divided like this. So that was just, my last point.
GA,
Yeah. Go ahead, Miss Mel.
if you had, let me ask you, if you had this, let's call it news on, what's going on, wrong with black people over here, right? Okay, let's call it the juicy news that's going on with black people over here, and I had a black person showing you what you need to do step by step to build as a black man, right? How to get that money, how to build a house, how to, you know, provide a family, for your family, but also how to build a community up, right? What would you go for?
So me personally, as I am, or
Yeah,
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 well, I personally, I actually would go for the building up a black man
right.
thing.
Okay. I think the majority of black people out there, if they were shown how, if I said to them, "Hey, I'm going to give you $1,000 to learn this trade," or to do, you know what I mean? Like if I were able to provide that sort of service to black people, I would believe
Mm,
the majority of them would go that way, right? And again, the reason why I'm saying this is because it's the unknown, right? When we're going up, we're going through the society and everything, we're being shown all this stuff about who we are, who they think we are, and everything else, but we're not shown the things that are out there that are really for us, right? That is really going to build our self esteem, our our community, right? Our like everything that you even just need for yourself. We don't have that readily available, right? All the things that I believe, even in Canada, that we tend to struggle with. We're like, hey, man, I wish I had, some funding for this. Or I wish I had funding for that. Or, I want to build this, but I can't because I'm stuck with, somewhere, somehow. There's always something that, we feel that is stopping us because we don't know. But there is somebody out there that knows. There is somebody out there that knows, hey, you know what? You have this. Here, you could go over here and you could get this, 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 this. And there's also another person that knows, well, yes, not only that you could go in this direction for it, but these are the things that you need to either fill out. These are the step by step things that you needed to know in order to get what it is that you want. Um, and so our society is very divided in that way. And again, that's just because we're not showcasing. Our concentration is so much on the things that are harming us than where we really need to concentrate on to build this up.
You are absolutely 100% correct. And that's actually what the crux of the issue that I wanted to, especially with you three here, have discuss as well. Um, and because we have seen a number of movement, not just movements, but also even organizations like even in the DRC, I remember there was a small group of us who used to gather around by this cafe and discuss things. We would discuss things that now I actually, back then I kind of thought, okay, they're so so, but now I actually think that those were very, very good conversations. One conversation I remember we had was because my country, the DRC, is very, very conservative, all right? It's very uh man is like this, and no matter what happens, the man will be right unless it's some horrifying situation, whatever, then he might be a bit wrong. But it's very, that's the type of society that we're part of. And the conversation we were having, I remember once, was about, is this right? And like, uh, is it actually normal for for a human being? I mean, women and men are both human beings. We would kind of bring those kinds of conversations in people's minds. Even here in South Africa, I remember there was a group that came to us when we were first years in university, who started talking to us, and they just asked us very simple questions that they were right. We've never actually heard before. For example, questions like, is it possible to rape your own wife? And people were like, no. And you would be surprised at how many people would say, no, she's your wife. You can't rape her. It's impossible to rape if she's your wife. And when they actually explain it to you, okay, so what if she doesn't want to have sex and you now force yourself upon her just because if she's your wife, does that still count as rape? And people would be like, some of them would be quiet and others would still be like, no, it's still not rape. If I want sex, I want sex. And those are the conversations that you started to actually think about. Maybe we've been believing in some crappy things all our lives. So there were groups like that. And the problem with that, however, is that when you have something good like that, groups that actually do a great difference, you have exactly what happened. Again, going back with the Black Panther Party, you have those bad actors, like what LA was talking about, these people, these selfish people. And that is where the problem comes in, especially in places like America, where Black people are a minority. They will find support in whatever people they can get. If you're Black, they tend to think that you must understand my situation because you are a fellow Black person like myself. But here in Africa, that is not the case at all. In Africa, most of the people look like us. So the thing is that we differentiate between the ones who are trying to help us and the ones who are not trying to help us. But in the States, if you're Black, the people assume that you're part of the cause because you're in it, and that is their downfall. And well, that is the downfall of anybody who thinks that way, because you need to see of what people are actually doing. So what I'm trying to say with that is that you have these good organizations that are bringing people in. You start growing. Once you start growing, you start getting more and more people involved, and more people start getting interested and start getting into the thing. And among those people, there will always be people who are in it for their own selfish reasons. There will always be people who will try to embezzle their funds. There will always be people who will try to seek attention. Some people literally will destroy an entire organization just out of jealousy, just because they didn't get the position of being this or getting much screen time as the other person. I have seen this so often that I hope that people do not overlook the fact that human nature will overcome a whole lot of stuff. People will destroy an entire good thing that will affect a lot of people just because they were not given a microphone to speak on one occasion. And so that is where it comes in. And the problem that I have with a lot of good-natured people, even not you guys particular, but some people who I actually think are very well-meaning, who are doing a lot of good job, they still I have a problem with them because they come in and they do not call out these people. They do not try to, they're not harsh on it. They do not send them out. They're like, you are hurting our organization, get out. You cannot run an organization if you have bad people who are literally destroying it from the inside, and you're thinking, oh well, they're Black like us and everything, let's try to find peace. What they tend to do, let me give you an example of what they actually do that is just messed up. They both sides situations. You have a person who has come in and maybe, let's say, they sexually assaulted another member of our organization, right? You come in here and you say, let's not fight. Look, you say sorry and you are no. A person sexually assaults another person. There is no both sides. And just because they're black, it doesn't mean that whatever. The consequences, first of all, they should be in jail, but they should never be associated with us at all ever again. But you have literally, and why I say sexually assaulted is because this tends to happen, especially when you have patriarchal system at in the organization where men start to now defend each other for the worst things, just like what you were saying, LA, where you have a man who is admitting to another man that he's doing this, and then the man, part of the bro code, keeps it a secret and or doesn't call him out on it or whatever. This sort of toxic behavior is what destroys the best organizations. We can have the best thing going. We can have the Black Panther movement. We can have what you're talking about, Mello, where these kind of ideas of showing the best of the society, of the community, and filming these things. We can have that and we can expand it. But for as long as the bad people who come in, and they will come in, are not expunged and disciplined or kicked out, it won't go anywhere. So I wanted to say that because I wanted to get your final thoughts on this one because I hope to have more conversations like this because there are so many conversations we could have. Just you can see for yourself that just here we touched some things that we didn't even think we would. Diaspora awards, money in the the industry, media, expansion, and so hopefully we'll have more discussions. But for this particular discussion, I was thinking that maybe we could have some final thoughts and maybe plan for a future. So I want you guys to kind of not just give your final thoughts, but also think of this. What do you think? What do you think? Just some final thoughts on what you think a way forward for especially young people. Or myself, I personally think, and I will stick to what I said at the beginning. People need to first of all hold parents, especially, more accountable over their children. You have situations where, uh, and you think that what I talked about before was depressing. What I see on the internet that depresses me the most is when I see bad mothers or bad parents showcasing that they are doing something wrong with their own children. Like, for example, they're not taking care of them, they're doing it. And you go through the comment, and it's people either laughing, making a joke out of it, or encouraging them, or doing whatever. I once saw a woman who was talking about, yeah, well, the baby was crying, so I just gave her all sorts of candy and stuff like that. I'm like, that's not how you are. You trying to give the child diabetes or what? So you have that people who do not hold each other accountable. Then you have other people who are destroying the community from the inside out. Like I came across another thing where it was a short where Whitney Houston gave her wig to Left Eye, one of the members of the Left Eye group. She's a woman. Because if she didn't, and this is literally what they said in the quote, they said otherwise she would have gone out with straight backs. I'm like, what's wrong with going out with her natural hair? And you see all these comments saying Whitney is a real hero. She saved her from the humiliation. What humiliation? These are Black people from the inside who are the cause of the problem. Oh, well, what is wrong with a Black woman showing off her natural hair? They're literally so brainwashed they think that they cannot go out without a wig, that a European styled wig, just by the way, or European straight haired style wig, one that is not our natural texture. These are the type of people that we don't want to be around. We're trying to help them, of course. And it's kind of like a quote from the Matrix where Morpheus says that, the very people that you're trying to save and get out of the Matrix are so in the Matrix that they will literally fight tooth and nail against you to stay in it. So the people that we're trying to help here, the Black community and everything, I do, like LA was saying, I think it's multifaceted. I think that there are different wrongs. Sometimes you do need to come in with a bit more understanding and compassion, but the bad things need to be called out. And that's my take. I think that is something for the thought for the day that people need to move forward with. That while you have to have this balance, like Emma was saying, showing the good side, but also removing the bad people from destroying what we're building. So that's my input. Just to finish off, we'll go with Emma, LA, and then Mello. You can conclude. So
Yeah, like I said, it's all about what you consume, right? Like if we're talking about media, and like you said, you see this I love natural hair. You see a lot of Black women wearing wigs, and that's another conversation to have. Is why do you feel that by wearing a wig, and I'm not talking about people who maybe are cancer survivors and things, or have alopecia and their reasons, it's like, or I'm just talking about the people who choose not to wear their natural hair, embrace their gray hair and everything else and wear a wig. It's another conversation. I have my thoughts, but that's, I think, is another conversation that it could be a whole segment, really and truly. But yes, it's all about what you consume, right? Like we we see these bad parents for sure. We see them out with their bonnets and they've got their daughter with the bonnet on too, and they're just carrying on in a grocery store somewhere. There's actually a TikTok that's called Ghetto TikTok, and it's all about Black people and the way that they get on social media. I personally refuse to let that feed into my algorithms. Like, I will not even give that any life. I tend to focus on excellence and Black excellence. I mean, I report on the things that go on against our people on a daily basis. So for me, that's my area, that's my passion. So I do think that it's important that we don't consume that and we try to focus on the good, because, like I said, those kinds of things will travel. Those kinds of things will get views galore, will get clicks galore, will be in the algorithms forever, and a lot of our people will feed into that. And you know, all that does again is benefit one group of people, and it's not us. So I think it's important that we, for our own well-being, our own mental health, we look at what we consume, because it does affect and shape how we navigate in life and how we think and all that stuff. Like Philip Scott was saying, it causes you to think a lot of these things, right? And build your own, focus on your own. If you don't like me, I don't like you. If I don't like this kind of content, I'm not taking it in. I'm going to focus on the good that our people are doing and really magnify that, and then, of course, like I said, creating these spaces where we can have these conversations. And if it involves workshop tools, resources, all of those things, that's, I think, what needs to be the focus to start moving towards, healing the community. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you for that. And so it just to sort of mention a point, so to basically media, what you consume. If the way forward, that I guess the advice that you're giving is stop consuming bad crap, basically. Like that's your point, if you're honest. Yeah, that's a good. That's LA. Please take it away.
Yeah, I agree with the things that both of you were saying so far. For me, it's always about reconciliation and resolution. And when you talk about, the people in the community that are doing good, and then the people in the community that are doing bad, yes, get them out, but rehabilitate them, because they will look for, that's why Manosphere exists, because they went to find other people who think like them to justify bad behavior and bad action and bad thought. And so you can find whatever it is that you're looking for out there. And that's not my final thought, but I just wanted to make a point about that. My final thought is that it starts with the person in the mirror. I don't want to be all Michael Jackson and stuff, but it really, really does. If you cannot hold yourself accountable, when your ego is so big that you cannot humble yourself to reflect on your life and be introspective and say things like, I'm sorry, to your children, to your spouse, to your friends, to your employer, when you don't know how to ask questions and instead lead with assumptions, what I want people to understand is that trauma is very real. Trauma is not a buzzword. Trauma has real implications in how you experience your socio, emotional, and economical life. It impacts us. And we need to find ways to, if you're not going to go find the help, you need to find ways to look within and listen to that part within yourself. Speak to your God, your ancestors, whoever it is that stabilizes you. Because unless your nervous system is calm, you are going to make reactionary decisions that have you clicking on the things that you should not be consuming. It will have you preferencing individual and making money over your community because you're in a trauma response. And this is our version of fight, flight, and fawn. And our community is suffering deeply because we don't know how to look at ourselves in the mirror and remove the masks. We need to remove our egos and begin to plan from there. That's about storytelling for me. It's all about the narrative that you are rewriting, and that's what I help people do. So that's the best way that I can think of to help my community and myself survive the trauma of being post-colonial.
Thank you for that, Ale. Just on the point of rehabilitation, you're absolutely right. The first step in fixing any problem, especially with a person who is not doing well, is rehabilitation. You can't cut someone's arm off just because they stole something. You try to, first explain to them the things. However, I do want to mention one thing on that. When you find that there is no way to rehabilitate a person, because sometimes there is no way, we have to be able to recognize that. Because I know that in the Black community, there are a lot of sayings and ideas that we've learned growing up, or that we hear maybe in a quote or a text or a meme or something, that's saying things like, the worst sinner can be changed, or the worst person can be. The reality that we have experienced in our lives is that that's not the case. There are some people that no matter what you try, no matter how much rehabilitation there is, they will continue to try to hurt members of our community, and they're within the community. The not being able to protect people, I think, is a worse crime than kicking somebody, excommunicating somebody who is hurting somebody. And the thing, but I know that it is a bit difficult for people in minority, where Black, in places where Black people are a minority, to understand that, because they're a minority. They would want to get as many. But for myself, for example, in Kinshasa, there is a lot of mob justice because the police doesn't do anything, and people have to take it upon themselves. You have a person running around with a machete, cutting people and raping little children, hurting people and everything. We try to speak to him. You can even slap him a bit to give him some corporal punishment and whatever. You can try to find the roots of his problems. Some people will not. They don't even sometimes understand what you're saying. Sometimes it's also a case of mental illness where there is nothing we can do. But what we're interested in that case is to protect the people who are being hurt. Because, as much as we would want the person to change, I personally, I would wish that there would never be a need for us to have to hurt people to get them to change, or to be harsh on people. I would wish that. But that the reality and the harsh realities of life is that some people will just continue to do that. Some people also, it's not just about physical harm. It's also about sometimes exploiting people. You have people who have scammed Black people of the community. They say, no, invest in my thing, give me your money and everything. A lot of people in churches as well. Give me your money and everything, but I'll put it in stocks and take it. They've taken people's life savings. Old people that were saving for their college tuition and everything, take it and ran away with it. Those kind of people are hurting the community from within. You can try to rehabilitate them. You can throw them in prison. They come out and they redo the same thing. Those people cannot be a part of us. So just to say, 100% agree with you. Rehabilitation should always be the first step. And some people do get rehabilitated, but we have to start being able to recognize as well those people who will never be able to, or even if they will in the future, we need to take action to protect ourselves and protect each other from those who hurt us, even within the community. So just wanted to put that there, not to even counter, but very important.
I hope you're not thinking that I am saying that they need to stay amongst us.
No, not at all.
Because that is definitely not what I'm saying. But I'm just saying, when you remove them, where are you putting them? Because they don't disappear into thin air. So unless you're talking about killing them, I don't know where they're going. And because they are allowed to still exist, we need to have a plan in place for the protection that you say we need. Because we can't just remove people. They're going to just be quiet. Shaming them and all those things can sometimes, if you watch a superhero movie, the villain gets created this way. And they will live their life trying to destroy because nobody ever figured out what's going on with the villain. Right? They might not be able to be rehabilitated. We can't just leave them to their own devices either.
Exactly. So this is actually a very good talking point. I'm glad that you mentioned you said that. The right wing has also controlled a lot of the conversation that has to do with punitive justice. In other words, incarceration, throwing black people in jail. People, the right will come and say, no, no, those black men, if there are so many black men in jail, it's because they deserve to be in jail. When the reality is that 56% of people, black people who are arrested actually get exonerated, and also 52% of black people who were sentenced to death, like they're on death row, also get exonerated. So that means that 7.5%, if black people are 7.5% more likely to be accused wrongfully. So the right wing, they use the whole, oh, black people are in jail for a reason, just to use it as against black people. But the reality is also, because they control the conversation so much, people don't like to talk about the fact that some people do need to be in jail. There are some people who are serial rapists, serial murderers in our communities and everything. If they are doing something that is so bad, and then we try to rehabilitate them, and that does not work and everything. There is a place for them to go, and that is friggin' jail. They can go to jail, and they'll be taken care of over there. No, for real, like really. If it's that bad, they will go over there. If And not only that, but we can't control them. Some of them, you even find some people in the black community who will be like, okay, well, the black community rejected me. I'm going to the right. I'm going to the MAGA people. Go to the MAGA people. They'll beat your ass even more than anywhere else that's happened. They can do whatever they want. And you're right. Unfortunately, there are some cases where, because they feel rejected and everything, and we've tried and everything, they will find themselves in spaces where they will kind of congregate, kind of like the incel community. They feel like no one is listening to our pain, so they go do that, and some of them have even committed some mass shootings and stuff like that. So there is that. But we do what we can do. You cannot spend all the energy that you have on people who repeatedly committed thing. We have to take care. So, and by the way, no, I don't think anybody listening to this understood it, that you were saying like we need to only focus on. No, no, no. I understood what you were saying. I'm just adding that because I know that that's part of the conversation as well.
Thank
So yeah,
you.
so they people who cannot be rehabilitated, there's a place for them, and sometimes I don't really believe in that karma stuff, but sometimes karma has a way of dealing things with them themselves. I mean, a lot of people who are shooting people. I think in the Bible, Jesus himself says, "Those who live by the sword will die by the sword." So the thing is that some people, their own lifestyle will eventually catch up with them, and eventually they'll meet the wrong person, and the problem will solve itself. And I hope that yeah, Mello, if you could take it away.
All I'm gonna say is, wow, this has been quite a ride. Um, I'm gonna try to make it short. Um, I think what we're all saying is that it really starts with education, communication, right? Finding the right ways of doing that. Um, when Emma was talking a little bit earlier about hair, it reminded me of the fact that I met a woman, a black woman, um, that wore wigs. And I later found out the reason why she wore wigs, and it was because she didn't know how to take care of her own hair. And she was much older. She was older than me, not much older, but she was older than me. She didn't know how to take care of her hair. Now, me as a black man, I found it kind of uncomfortable, but I decided to talk to her about her hair. And it's because I grew up amongst women, right? And I said, well, you don't need to wear this thing all the time because, you should be able to take care of your own hair. You should be able to comb it and so forth. And she didn't know, or whether she didn't know or didn't have, feel like she had the time or whatever. But I just said, look, instead of hiding it every minute, comb it out, get somebody to comb it out and put your hair in some protective styles. Where did I get that from? Protective styles. I'm telling her to put it in protective styles, and I'm pretty sure in due time, your hair is going to grow and it's going to look better, right? Not only you're going to appreciate it for yourself, but other people are going to appreciate it too. Now, she worked amongst white people, and maybe that's why she decided to do that. But soon enough, this is what she did. She went out, got her hair done, got them little braids and and stuff like that. And her hair started to grow out. And then all of a sudden, soon enough, her hair was much longer. She started to wear her own hair out. And every now and then she still puts it in these protective styles. That was me as a black man sharing that with a black woman. Was that my place? Maybe not, right? But to think that she couldn't get that from any other black woman that she surrounded herself with made me think, right? Made me wonder. The thing that LA spoke about going across the river or the pond and having to put down stones, right? And the fact that some people are afraid to go and do that. And there's some, and white people tend to move the stones around. And then there's some people, I was going to add that some people are going, no, don't do it. Don't, don't do it. What's wrong with you? You crazy? I'd rather know how LA actually put her stones so I could put them in the same place too, so that I can move across, right? So I think education and communication is such a big part of our society to fix, which may help, mirror things in the right direction for us. Yeah, there's always going to be bad people, like you said, GA. There's always going to be bad people, and that's just people, period. Um, People that make the wrong decisions and so forth. But it starts with our youth. Again, to your point, starts with our youth and trying to um, show them, right, regardless if they have bad parents or not. If you feel that they have bad parents, who are we to really decide whether they have bad parents or not, either, right? Um, but taking children and giving them the tools that they need in order to learn outside their home, um, if we can't do it in our home, a better way of doing things, right? And again, the reason why I think about that is because when I was young, my mom only had certain amount of tools. If she only had a screwdriver, um, but I needed a hammer to do something, and she didn't have that, why am I going to scrutinize her and tell her that she's a bad parent, right? She doesn't even know how to use a hammer, but she has a screwdriver, right? So we look to our society, and our society, unfortunately, is so fragmented that it isn't the way how it used to be, where the man, woman, right, where their kids are living in a home, and around them we have community that will look out for each other as well. We don't have our grandparents next door. We don't have our aunties and uncles next door. We don't have our closest friends next door anymore, or in the same community. They're an hour, 5 hours in a different country or whatever away. So we can't look out for each other maybe as well as we used to, at least over here, right? At least over here. I'm not speaking of any other country, but but yes, I think if we start with our youth and you know, give them the tools that what we're learning, and that we're saying, hey, if I can't tell a lesson to somebody else that's older, that is going to take it and do nothing with it, and that's going to badmouth and say all these different things. I'd rather put it into, somebody that is 13 years old, that is going to grow into being something, and be able to utilize the tools, and, hope that he's not fragmented by all the things that are out there, right? So, yeah.
Thank you very much, Mello. And I wanted to say something, and I hope that maybe you can respond as well. If when you said, who are we to say who are the bad parents? Now, I don't really like to use the word, and I've had this conversation with somebody else in the past, where it's like, when people say, "Oh no, I don't think that he's a bad person," or I don't actually speak in those terms, because you can't say the whole person is whatever. I don't even know these people, but I can say that some parents do really, really bad things. Some parents, and these bad things are so bad that we need to, that if we do not have a stance on it, it actually makes a situation worse. So, for example, parents men who beat their wives in front of their children, men who beat their own children, women who allow men to come in and are not even supervising their children. The men end up sexually abusing the children. Women who lock their children out of the house because they feel like, oh well, you disrespected me. Let me remind you of where you live, and they leave them out in the cold, in the snow. They think that they're disciplining their children, but they're not. and then you have, and this is really not for because you said this, but this is because I hear it a lot for in communities, online spaces where people will come when you try to tell them that no, this is super seriously messed up and you should actually be in jail for this. You'll find other people who will come and say, well, they have their own parenting style, or that's just the way that they do things and everything. That is not a parenting style. That is torture and abuse of another person. That person is also going to grow up one day, and they're going to say, which is what adults nowadays say, which is, well, this is what I went through, so you'll go through it too, or this is how I grew up. I don't know if you guys saw a case of that girl. There was a case of some time ago of a girl who said that her mother was keeping her from sleeping, was sleep depriving her by blasting music all the time and having people come over. And this child is like, and I sympathize a lot with that because I get serious splitting migraines on the left of my head when I'm woken up by loud noise. Like it's so bad that I feel like my nose is going to bleed. So I felt very bad for her. But then you go and you listen to what other women had to say that. And they're like, well, she has to learn the hard way. I mean, this is her mother's house and everything. The mother can do whatever she wants. I'm like, the mother is abusing the child. You're saying that this is the mother's way of doing things. The thing is that I'm only mentioning that because we have to be more direct. I feel, especially in the online space, that a lot of black, and this is really not on any of you here, and a lot of people that I know of, especially in the online space, it doesn't apply to them. But a lot of people, unknown people in the online space, in the black community space, I think are just afraid of other black people. They're afraid of saying certain things. They're afraid of getting a lot of backlash. And the ones who are saying this, where do they end up? They always end up on the right. They decide, well, the only people who are talking about this are people on the right. So let me go and join them. So then you have your Candace Owens and stuff like that, people who say absolutely ridiculous things and eventually start denigrating and destroying the people on the right side. Because the things that we don't talk about, just kind of like what LA was saying, if you kind of leave it open, other people will take over the conversation. And if they take over the conversation, they control it. Go ahead, Mello. Mhm. You
Um,
wanted to say that? Yeah.
yeah. So, don't get me wrong. I know there are, we all know good from bad, right? We all know
Yeah.
good from bad.
True.
If I were to judge my mother by what you just said, then, I could be like, well, she was a bad mother, right? Um, but
Sorry.
at the same
Oh,
time, I
sorry.
see the
The
good in
thing is
her.
cutting. Can you repeat what you just said now?
Yeah. I was saying that, are you able to hear me? Okay. I see you're frozen.
Yeah, yeah. I can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. Um,
I can hear
if
you
I were
now.
to, yeah, okay. If I were to judge my mother based off of what you said, I would have said that then she's a bad mother, right? Um, but what I've come to learn as I got older and I started to understand um, people more, and I started to understand my mother even more so more. I I then started to realize that not only was she trying to figure a lot of things out, if you want to call it product of her environment or environments, because she's been in multiple places, but she also tried her best, right? And what I found is that, growing up, a lot of, me and my friends, we would kind of compare, oh, I got beat worse than you, and da 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 da. You have those conversations, oh, I got the belt.
Mm.
Oh, no, I got the this, and oh, I got the that.
We
And,
had those
we would all
conversations
laugh.
too.
Right. And we laugh about it
Yeah.
because, we
Mm.
realize that this is the way that we grew up, but we have something in comparison. Obviously, in the situation when it happened, it wasn't funny, right? But we could look
Mm.
back and say, well, that was the parenting style that our mothers chose. Um, Mothers are, if I were to continue with mothers and fathers, are like managers, okay? I'm going to just kind of compare it like that. There are bad managers and there's good managers. How do you know you have a good manager? Is when they know what to do. They have the training to become a good manager, right? They get the training with ethics. They have the training with this and so forth to become a good manager. Parents don't usually have the training per se. A lot of them may not have the training, right? Because of and when I say the training, I mean like the good training, because you could be trained
Right. No.
bad as
Yeah.
well,
Bring up.
right? Okay. So
Mm,
if you want to have like good parenting, you have to be brought up in a style that is going to show you all of the things that encompass a good parent and be also taught that, not just shown that, but also taught that. Okay. And as far as I'm concerned, my mother didn't have that, right? So the reason why I was saying in terms of judgment, like, do I judge my mother and tell her that she was a bad mother, right? When I know now that she's hurting, she's trying to figure it out. She was, she was 19 when she had me, and she was trying to figure out what to do next, right? She was 27 when such and such happened, right? I know when I was 27, I didn't have it all figured out. I know when I was 30, I didn't have it all figured out. You know what I mean? And even at this age, I don't have it all figured out.
yeah.
So, but
Mm,
not to excuse obviously the people that are blatantly, because I watch a few things too where I do see that there are parents out there doing locking their kids up in the cabinets and sometimes burning their kids and things like that. Like I see those things as well. I'm not saying or condoning any of that stuff, but I'm just talking about the day-to-day black woman, black men that are trying to do things in the society, that are trying to live, trying to survive, trying to get things to where they're getting it. And some of them still adapt, beating their kids. Some of them stop doing it. Some of them say, I don't want to do that anymore because my parents used to do that to me. All right. So I
mm.
can't judge people from that point of view, but at the same time, we got to start somewhere, to everyone's
Yeah.
point.
No, you're absolutely right. And I get what you're saying. I've had this conversation with someone very close to me before. They were actually American, and they would tell me that whenever I would bring up this subject, that we have to understand these things, and that's the thing. That's actually why I have these conversations, because I think that the most important thing is to understand why a person is the way they are in order to try to fix the problem. I mean, throwing someone in jail without understanding, or just beating on someone without understanding why they're doing. We had thieves, for example, who, when the mob would get to them, you get there and you find them already tied up because the mob already slapped them across the face. And I always took the approach. Can you still hear me?
You're breaking
Can
up a
everybody still
little
hear me?
bit. But
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. Oh, okay. Let me just repeat what I said. So, you understanding the root cause of the problem is very important. It's actually the most important thing, because you can have a thief who keeps on coming back to steal, no matter how many times the mob beat him up and everything. He would always come back. Well, that's because the root cause of the problem is that the person is hungry and he doesn't have a job. So, no matter how many times you beat him, he's going to keep coming back. So, understanding the problem is important. However, like we said, for example, most of the world's serial killers had horrible childhoods. They were also victims at some point, but then they ended up causing harm to them. The thing is that I can understand their pain, I can understand their trauma, but I cannot, like you said, excuse the bad actions that they do. And that's why I actually started this conversation with about Black men and women. Because the conditions, if you remember at the beginning, I said the conditions under which a person is born is going to determine much of their lives. This is why this is why these conversations are important, because we can also talk about, for example, people who have children when they are just straight up not ready. Don't have a stable home. You sex with a person who you hardly know, and then you fall pregnant. The thing is, a lot of people. Can everybody hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I missed most of what you just
Hello.
said.
yeah, you're breaking up quite a
I'm so
bit.
sorry. The signal is going out. Oh, okay. No, no, no. I think it should be fine now. Just wave your hand if if I'm breaking up again. Okay. Hello. Just, yeah, wave your hand if I'm breaking up again, please. But you can hear me now.
Yeah, you're
Okay.
good now.
So what I'm saying is that wonderful. Because these conversations are important because, for example, there are people who are not in the position to have children. If you want to say it, they're not in the position to have children at a specific time. You are going around, you are in an unstable situation, but you are sleeping around with a man that you hardly know, and then you fall pregnant. That is going to have consequences on the child. Of course, people usually take an approach to say, let's sympathize with the person, and we can sympathize with her. But there is now a third party involved, and that is a defenseless child, a person that you're going to have to take care of, but you cannot. So now I feel like we need the reason why the accountability is there because the person has a choice, unless of course he was raped or whatever. That's a different story. But when it is your choice, people need to be educated on the relationships between men and women because if they are literally bringing whole human beings into this world who are going to suffer under those conditions that they never asked to be a part of. And so, definitely, I believe that understanding the situation is important, but the consequences of these things and the consequences of what people do, especially when childbirth is involved, I think that people need to be a lot more direct in telling people that their actions have consequences, especially when children or giving birth is involved. So yeah, but that's not to contradict what you were saying. That is actually just to add to it that understanding the situation is important. And some people have gone through really horrible things, and they do their best. There are some people who do mean well, but the results have to be examined through a very realistic and I think a just sense, in the sense that if they're doing harm, they need to be stopped. But these conversations are what I think we should have. And I think that I am really glad that I chose you guys for this conversation because I am very happy with your input. I'm happy with everything that you guys were talking about, what you were saying. I don't think I could have picked a better panel, honestly, with the responses that I got. And I would like to have more conversations in the future. I would like to also end off by saying that I am actually working on a video that is discussing a lot of the issues that especially Miss Emma was saying not that long ago, but I completely forgot what she was saying, what it was about. I am actually working on that right now. I hope that if you're on Instagram, I hope to choose you guys as collaborators. But when I share it out, because you're going to really understand that and I already wrote the script and everything. I've already doing the recording. It's just a coincidence that you guys spoke about that. And then besides that, I will, as everybody can see, the handles are on people's there, except for Mello, who I will share in the description of this video. I will put all of their links to their Instagram pages. But is there anywhere else that we can find you guys? I don't know. Oh, Miss Emma, I know that you have a channel, a YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's Emma Ansa Unfiltered. So you can find me there.
Yes.
And then you can also catch me on the African Diaspora News Channel, Emancipation
Uh-huh.
Media, and the Daily Scrum News, which I can provide you with.
Great. And Mr. Mello, is there anywhere else that we can find you?
You could find me at mello.one, mello.one, and also trfmedia.com. That's where you can find me.
Awesome. And LA, of anywhere else besides Instagram?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube. My most of my handles are This is LA Wade Inc. Or just This is LA Wade, or LA Wade. But you can find me on YouTube,
Mhm.
Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, and of course Instagram. And my
Awesome.
website, this is LA
So
Wade.
once again, and awesome. Well, we have that too. So once again, I really am very happy that you guys were here to have this conversation with me, and that it was you guys specifically, because I really appreciate your input. I intend to have more conversations like this, sometimes even repeating the same conversation again on the same topic, but in different, or maybe we can have different people. And just like for today, you even saw for yourself, we've touched on so many things, diaspora wars, we've touched on this. There are other things we can also talk about, the actual systemic things that are happening to Black people from the folks, um, and all sorts of things. So this is just the beginning, and I think that it's very important for us to have these conversations. And you never know, this could grow into something that could really change a lot of people's perspectives on things. And by changing people's perspectives and their minds, they can change their actions. So with that, I think that we can leave it there for today. But this is definitely not going to be the last time, I hope. And so thank you very much for everybody. And I think that will be it for today. Thank you again.
Thank you, GA.
Thank you, GA.
Thank you.